Cool, there we go. Awesome. So I'll start again today with our karakia to begin. All right, so our karakia tēmatanga. E te whānau, whaia kia marama, kia whai take e roto e au mahi katoa, kia tū, kia kaha, kia hora taumareno, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou kia tātou katoa. Awesome. So today is going to be a little bit more presenty. We've got quite a bit to get through, and at the end, I've got basically the wrap up. So I've got, here's a reminder of everything we offer. Here's how you get access to it, because there's a few different things just because you guys are training teachers and student privacy and things like that. So I'll go over those. And then I've made a document, which I'll send to Kerry as a PDF or send to whoever as a PDF that you will all receive, that basically has the how-to, next steps, if any of your schools are keen on learning more about it, how you can get access to it, and some extra things that you can help to support you as well, okay? The one thing that isn't on there is our planning templates for the Te Ara Ako project, the triangle stuff. So those are in the slides, which are attached to the PDF that I'll send out. So you can download the slide and just use that, or you can draw it up yourself at this stage. It just hasn't gone through branding approval yet, so I just need to wait a little bit longer for those things. I'm going to show you a different version of the planning model today, which is specifically for you in your practice. So the process today that we're going to go through is, let me go through here. Same cycle, but I want you to flick it from using it with your students to using it for your own practice this time, okay? Now, you might think of this as a way that you can monitor how the cycle is going in your classroom, how your experience using Te Ara Ako is working, or you can use it as a teacher inquiry model to think of actually how is my practice going as a teacher. So I've done it as quite an overview way and provided some questions and some frameworks on how you as a student teacher or as a teacher in your classroom when you graduate can use this cycle to really reflect on your practice and make really impactful changes, much like how a student would move through a project. I like to finish with this piece because we give a lot to our students, but this cycle can give a lot to you as well. So I want you to take note of how this can help you reframe your thinking and improve your practice in a nice, clear way when you've got lots of reflection templates and things coming at you from lots of different areas. So this can kind of siphon it down into that one piece again for you, okay? Feel free to jump in with any questions along the way. All right. So we're going to jump in with Pakeke first, wonder. We know these buzzwords by now. So Pakeke, that wondering. Now, if you've looked at a teacher inquiry model before, it's a way where you can go, what does my classroom look like? What's happening in my practice? What's happening in my classroom? And how can I look at it, use observation, find some things that need changed or that I can work on or improve, and then actioning those improvements and seeing results, okay? So again, this is for you as a teacher, not for the learners in front of you, but it affects and impacts the learners in front of you, which means it's just as important, because if we don't look after ourselves, how are we to look after the people that sit in front of us every day? Okay, so this is a really key part in that. So same situation, and I've kept the whakatauki along the bottom the same as the student version, and I've done that for a reason, because it's the same thinking process and the same cycle for us as kaiako as it is for akonga, our learners. Okay, so those who do not seek will not find. If we stay in our narrow-minded kind of classroom space where everything we do is fine and there's no need to change, we don't find those successes and don't make those changes and have that impact and that growth that we need as professionals, okay? So the first part starts with wondering and observation. Dedicate that time towards observing your kids. And I often say this piece in the second point, slow down to speed up. There's always going to be a busy term. There's always something that's happening. So saying, oh, I'll do it when athletics is over, or I'll do it when that's not going to be realistic. What you want to do is do it in the busy times, because that's where you see where there are things that could change. Okay, so there's always going to be something that week, or always going to be something next week. And I often say, I'll start work-life balance when I finish this project, and it doesn't happen. I've been saying it for 2 years. So you just need to get in there and start, okay? And honestly, that's the best thing you can do, is actually when it's chaotic, drop what you're doing. And I know it feels against your, instinct. Drop what you're doing and just go and sit in the middle of the classroom and just watch what's happening around you. The kids might look at you a bit strange and they might go, what's happening here? But that's where you're going to notice things that you wouldn't normally notice if you're frazzled, if you're up the front and you're like, oh, I need to fix this, and so-and-so's running with scissors and there's stuff flying everywhere and things like that. Like, just sit in the middle of your classroom. Obviously, stop the running with scissors first. That's a safety issue. But sit there and go, what is happening in my classroom? Because you'll look around and you'll go, oh my gosh, these 3 kids that I've never seen work before are actually collaborating on this. Maybe I should include that a little bit more in what I'm doing tomorrow. You're going to pick up on those things you wouldn't normally notice. Okay, so definitely slow down to speed up. Okay, it's all about that failing fast. I've spoken about that quite a bit. It's that same thing. Okay, create time for wondering. So I used to have, and I recommend that everybody does this, go and get, the old, they're like Kiwi scrapbooks. They're like big A3 scrapbooks with the blank pages. Get some felt tip pens that you like from Typo or wherever it might be, some post-it notes, whatever. Keep it beside you and wonder all the time. And don't go, oh, I'll write it down later, because then it will be gone. Write it down at the time. There's nothing wrong with stopping to take note of things that you can improve. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's about making sure that you're reflecting along the way, because teaching is such a lifelong journey, such as learning. It's always learning. And this is where we take stock and make those changes. So use a scrapbook to just think and add things along the way. And as you think of it, not later, and encourage the weird and the wonderful. And I add that piece on the end, because you know how I've spoken about that teacher filter that we have? So if we take that teacher filter off, think about that weird stuff that you kind of pops into your head and you kind of go, oh, little Jimmy asked about frogs today. I wonder what it would be like to have frogs in the classroom. Just write it down. It might disappear into the abyss of nothing, but it might come back later on in time and you go, actually, that would be a really cool inquiry or a really good project. So just write it all down, okay? It's a bit like journaling. Color code the themes and add why these points are related, okay? So once you've got quite a bit of observation done, and I'm not meaning a day, I'm thinking, remember how we talked about this being a short phase? It still applies here, but across probably like a week or 2, you want to do a lot of digging into this and kind of observation. Now, this might not just be in your classroom. Go to other people's classrooms, okay? Go and see what they're doing as well. You'll do a lot of that as a student teacher as you see your associate teachers or your mentor teachers teach. Write all that down, scrapbook it out. Even if it's not in your requirements for your practicum, it will really be beneficial for your practice, I promise you. Okay, that is where you're going to learn the most. Okay, it might not be in the box, but it's going to be really beneficial. Once you feel like you've got enough and you go, actually, I've got quite a lot of observation here. I'm talking 20, 30 pages, not 2 pages. Color code those themes. Okay, so highlight them, draw colored pictures around them, add descriptions. And I've put Solo tool of a hexagon map. So I've talked about Solo taxonomy quite a bit in our lesson frameworks of how we've created things. And there's a tool that they use called a hexagon map. And you know how a hexagon has those sides? And if you can put those sides together of 2 points, they must be related somehow. So what is the connection between those 2? So what you can do is end up with this kind of map or this kind of connection between all these ideas, and you'll start to see these themes kind of portray themselves. For example, it might be, actually, a lot of the observation I've done is of my boys in maths. That's where a theme's coming through for me. So you're going to start kind of seeing how things connect together. Or maybe it might be, actually, with this project or with what we're doing now, I've noticed that my planning the kids aren't understanding what I'm asking them to do. It's not connecting to them. They're still coming up to me all the time saying, what am I meant to be doing? And you might see that coming through, okay? So it's a good idea just to group those together. Any questions about that at this stage? Any comments? Does this resonate with you guys? Is this making sense? Yeah. Fabulous. There we go. All right, I'll skip to the next one. Tuhura, discover. Now, this is slightly different to the student version because usually this would be a really long section, right? This is actually quite a short section. It almost swaps the first 2 around when you look at it from a teacher perspective, okay? This can go quite long depending on how you do it and what the theme is that you're starting to pull out, Now, this is before you decide on what you're going to kind of change in your practice or look into about your practice. So again, remember how when we do it for the students, this is the hook, this is the discovery, this is that inquiry stage, that kind of exposure phase, and then hono is that connection point, okay? So from what we know now, how can we, okay? So this is the same. The second stage is about discovery. So we're not siphoning off into one lens yet. We're looking at everything still. We're looking at all of these things. And you're going to do data collection, okay? Data is really important because decisions get made based on data. And yes, you can have videos of kids saying, this worked really well and I really enjoyed this. And that's great. But if you can find a way to turn that into data and turn that into a shift, you're going to get a lot more buy-in from the people like the senior leadership team, board of trustees, other people in your team, if you're wanting to make a change in a system, okay? It's just a wee tip because I've learned that over my time. When I first started teaching, I was like, I can see that the kids are getting so much out of this. I can see how deep this learning is and look at this and look at this, and that was great. But teachers weren't able to replicate that because they couldn't see the shift in the data. They couldn't see that shift on how that impact was being made. And it doesn't have to be literacy and numeracy data or curriculum level data. It might be how many kids would now take digital technologies as a subject in high school? How many kids would now take hard materials when they get to intermediate? And you do a survey pre and post. And once you do that project, you see that shift. And that's like, wow, look, I'm encouraging these kids into STEM, you know? So it becomes bigger than that. So data collection is really important. Qualitative and quantitative. Now, if you're not sure the difference between the two, qualitative is that video stuff, the written feedback, interviews with your kids, based on all of these kind of comments that and observations that you've done, okay? Quantitative is that numerical data, the spreadsheet stuff, you know, the graphs and that kind of thing, okay? So looking at that qualitative and quantitative data. Okay, I always get you to ask, who is missing from the table? Lay it all out and go, actually, what's missing here? And you probably have all been familiar, I would say, with Vygotsky in your studies so far, I would imagine. So Ao Vygotsky and his micro to macro stuff, I would look at that and go, actually, is our community missing from the table? Of all these observations, who's missing? Okay, is the community missing? Have I got connections with whānau? Add it to your scrapbook. Add those things. Okay, this is where you're discovering that. Why might that be? Okay, I do the circles myself. I go, right, here's me, here's my class, here's the four walls of the classroom, here's the school, here's the community, and here's the wider community. Okay, patterns and trends over time, not just one-off instances. So with your observations and then looking a little bit deeper, are they happening over time? Are they happening again and again and again, or are they just one-offs, and kind of siphoning them off into those pieces? Is it an event or is it a trend? Okay. And then how do internal and external influences factor into the picture? Now, when I wrote this, I obviously had a really good idea. And now I can't remember what that was when I wrote it. Let me think if I can remember what I was thinking. Internal and, okay. I think, yeah, it would have been. So if you think about your kids coming into school, when I'm talking about events versus trends, if little Jimmy is coming to school and an event's happened, but you know that something at home isn't going well, or you know that there's been stuff that's affecting, he hasn't been having breakfast, maybe he's having a friendship group issue, those things, how do they factor into your observations, okay? But it's important to not disregard an issue because of an external influence, because they're going to happen. They're going to happen again and again. You're going to have kids that have these external issues or external things that do influence their learning. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're looking at things as well. And that also comes at that who's missing from the table part as well. Okay. I think that was it anyway. Any questions about that stage so far? If there's anything that's not making sense, please let me know and I can explain it in a little bit more practical sense. Not at this stage? Okay. Here's me thinking I would never use Vygotsky ever again after uni, but there we go, he's there. Okay, Hono Connect, this is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable, okay, especially if you're doing this with more than one person. So often in a school you would do this as a team, so you might do an inquiry with a group of people and look at, especially if you're in a collaborative space, versus if you're in a single cell, often you might do an individual teacher inquiry. It just depends again on the school that you are in, and also on whether you are doing it on a project or on your practice, or whether it's part of your school-wide appraisal system. There's all these different layers that come into play of how you might use this. This is by far the uncomfortable bit, but it's a good uncomfortable, because this is where you have to take accountability and go, actually, I need to change that. Because teachers are really good at being right. We are. I swear we're all Virgos at some stage, but we mustn't be. But my mum thinks that we're all Virgos, because I am. But it's all about connecting those observations and that data to your practice and going, your philosophy as a teacher, and saying, actually, now I'm going to understand and see this a little bit clearer now and understand what I can change. So this is where we introduce that question, right? Same as the kids. So it's not about brainstorming solutions yet. It's about digging deeper. It's about having conversations with your colleagues and going, am I just using some bias here? Am I assuming something about this child? Am I assuming something about maths as a subject? Am I assuming something about technology as a subject? Do I need to reflect a little bit deeper? It's about you asking questions now, okay? How are the influences contributing or mitigating the problem? So how are all of the things that you've picked up along the way, remember how I talk about when we're planning a project to have that vision and going, if you're not making moves towards that vision, it will stay a vision. Same kind of thing here. So thinking about what you're observing, are these things influences, or are they actually things that are adding to the problem? So what can you take away? So looking at those observations and going, actually, that didn't need to happen because I didn't actually need to do that piece. Take it out. Okay, so it's just about digging deeper and taking time to understand, A, why the observations are there in the first place, and B, looking and self-reflecting and go, this is a me problem, this is a system problem, this is a school problem. Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe you're finding all these things you're doing really well. There's all those other opportunities there. And sweeping the runway. Now, I say this instead of sweeping it under the carpet. Okay, so don't sweep it under the carpet, sweep the runway. That's a big thing. It's not a blame game, okay? It's not well, I got told to do this by senior leadership and that's why that's happening, okay? That's not going to help you, and it's not going to help you grow as a professional or as a teacher. So what you need to be thinking is, actually, I acknowledge that had happened. How can we, it's that solution-focused mindset, that growth mindset that we always talk to our kids about, but often it takes a little bit of our mindset shift to go, actually, I can do this better. I think that maybe we could change this. I don't know the answer, but let's go on a journey to find out what that might be. And that's where you're going to look at that trend that's come out and you're going to make a decision on what you want to change. Okay, so from the data, from the observations, from the clarity now, you might say, hey, actually, look, I'll use the boys in maths as an example because I said it earlier. If you've got a lot of points in your observations that have come up here, we've got a really bad kind of connotation with attitudes in maths, especially from our boys, especially from this particular group of boys. That's what I'd really like to focus on to change. Okay, that's what I'd really like to look at, because now you have a focus and you have clarity on your next steps. So then, with what you know now, how might you improve? And then you create that vision question again. You create that question for your own project. Okay, it might not be, a community mural or a garden, but what you're doing is actually impacting kids' education. You've got to remember that. When you self-reflect and change your practice, you're changing that kid's experience with the education system because of the things that you're doing. So again, we're taking that question, and it's a hugely impactful question because you are changing education for the kids in front of you. Okay. All right. Any questions on that point? Kiri.
I'm curious. In the past, the question you wanted was really big. You didn't want to make the mural. You wanted, how could we make the area beautiful, or even bigger than that? So with this, how big question do we go? Do we narrow it down, or do we make it more holistic?
It's a good question. It depends on the context entirely, and again on your school system, on what's happening within your kura, because you might have an overarching school question that might say, how might we improve educational outcomes for Māori and Pasifika students, for example. And then you would then dive in a little bit deeper and go into something a little bit more honed into what you've observed in your classroom. If you're doing it siloed and you're on your own, you can have that big question, but I would also make sure you bullet point and describe what you're actually looking for underneath. The reason being is that this is more of a research-driven process, so you do need that kind of question-answer approach rather than kind of a holistic, not a holistic, but a wide umbrella, as it were. Okay, so you would kind of want to go a little bit deeper into what you're looking for, purely because you are looking to change a specific aspect and you've done that observation for that purpose. Yeah. So it does depend. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. For example, I wouldn't say I want to improve 20 boys' math scores in my class by 15%. That's a bit too specific. I would go, how can I change my students' attitudes towards maths? That would be my big question. Because even though it doesn't feel big, it is a big thing. It's massive. So if you can do that, you're not necessarily saying, oh, how can we build a community garden? How can we improve food insecurity and food waste in our community? You're changing the trajectory of how that kid feels about maths for the rest of their life. So even though that question doesn't feel big, it's massive to do that. And when you have that connection with that kid, see that light bulb moment, and they then start loving maths, that is why we do what we do. Okay? So it doesn't feel big, but it is. I had a class of students I was teaching. I was in actually a streaming situation where I had my 20 kids were all operating below or well below kind of the national standards at the time, in the days of national standards. And by connecting with those kids and using a cycle like this, pre me making the cycle, I was able to get those kids to working above from well below or below. And when you have that connection with those kids, I've seen them 4 years later and they'll run up to me in the supermarket and go, hey miss, like da-da-da, all this stuff. And it's because you've had that connection, that light bulb moment with them. That's the stuff that sticks with you, and it sticks with them as well. So by doing this, you get to have those moments. Okay, so it is really important. Any other questions or comments about that? Cool. All right. Go to the next piece. Oaha, create. This is the cool bit. This is the trying. Now, this is another piece that does depend on your school. So everything I'm saying depends on your school situation. You can tailor it to suit whatever you're doing. But ideally, you're in a place where you have the ability to try things, okay? And it's not about using the kids as guinea pigs, because often the kickback is, well, you've tried all this stuff, but it's not working. So you need to be really careful and targeted around what you choose to try and make sure that you're doing it in a really purposeful way, because it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all scenario, because it just doesn't work. It's got to be tailored. So you might do it with a small group of kids and say, hey, look, these kids I'm going to give it a go with and see if it works. And you might try something else with another small group. And as soon as you kind of see the wheels start to fall off and you go, actually, I'm not going to go any further, pull it back and try something else, okay? But just make sure that what you're doing isn't putting everybody into the same kind of bucket, because you're not, with 30 kids in front of you, it becomes too hard to do that and to really get meaningful data or evidence from that, because everybody's operating at different levels. But what I would do is, with a small reading group or a small maths group or a small project group, try something, whether it be a new research, a new pedagogy, it might be a new tool, it might be a new app, it might be something just small, and go, actually, the kids really liked that. Then bring in some more kids, then bring in some more kids. And it takes time, because for you to do observation on how it's going, you need to have this small group in front of you so you can do it meaningfully instead of trying to run 30 kids through the same thing, okay? And then once you do it once, it's easier to add more kids in and then add more kids in, okay? So I've got a template here to show you how to plan this, because it's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of kind of like practice, pedagogy, Vygotsky, all those cool words that we love to invent in teaching. We love an acronym and we love hard words. My mum used to call, when I first started teaching, I used to say pedagogy and she'd be like, Tamagotchi, what? She still says it now. She just doesn't get it. And now she works in an early childhood centre, which cracks me up. So now she knows how to say it properly. But I'm going to show you how you can kind of plan something that you want to implement to change your practice. But it's really important that this piece is all about changing as you go. Teachers are the best at adapting. We are. We pivot and we change depending on what's in front of us and depending on what's happening. And this is one of those things as well. It's also about looking at it like a science experiment in a way, without the human testing, of course, but you're thinking about those variables, which are those external and internal influences, and keeping note of those things. Why didn't that session go well? So, for example, you might be trialing something like Te Ara Ako, for example, in your classroom, and you might go, actually, we fell off during the Pakeke phase, but it might be because you had swimming sports that got on late, so you felt rushed. So keep those wee notes down all the way through so that you can reflect on those as you go back. Okay, how will you monitor your progress is really important. So that's, again, keeping that scrapbook. You might do voice recordings at the end of the day. I used to do that. I used to do a 20-second recap of my day, because I obviously can talk a lot and really fast, as you can tell. But I did that, but I also took lots of photos. Okay, so making sure that they're obviously not shared with anybody because it's the kids, but making sure if you're doing that in a practicum sense, you want to get permission to do those things. But it is a beautiful way of looking, and actually taking videos as well is really, really important, so you can hear, so you're using your senses to understand what's going on around you. Okay. Call on those who can aid and support. Look for expertise. That is really important. No one, I feel like in some settings, teachers can feel like they're against one another, and that's not what our profession is about. We're there to lift each other up, and there's so many people that have been in teaching for so long that have so much experience that they can share, and they would love to have you observe their class. They would love to have a chat with you and you say, hey, look, I'm really struggling with this. Do you have any advice for me? And it's not about saying I'm doing it wrong. It's, again, that feedback stage. So as we get to that refined stage, bringing those people back in and saying, hey, I've tried this and it's really working. What do you think? And they will either go, that's fantastic. And they might even say, I really like that. I might do that as well. So it's all about creating that collaboration space, just like we encourage for the kids. So this creation phase, when we do the project-based learning, we talk about those 21st century skills: communicating, collaborating, creating. Same for you. It's really, really important to communicate with your colleagues and collaborate with your colleagues, whether you're in a classroom with them or not. Okay, so making sure that you're seeing the value that they bring to your practice as well. Okay, awesome. Quick win ideas versus long haul. That's the other piece where I wanted to link back to your question, Kerry, about the impact. So if you're looking at things and going, hey, look, because have you guys heard of Kahoot, the quiz game that they do? So for me, that can either be used, same as EP actually, can either be used as a quick win, or it can be used as a long haul practice change. So it's about making that call between, is what I'm implementing going to get kids excited for a short period of time, but if I repeat this every week for the rest of the year, is it going to get old and is it going to be busy work? Or is it going to impact my practice and improve learning outcomes for the kids? It takes a little bit of practice to find out those things and to figure out what is something that is going to be a long haul change and what is something that's just a quick win. That doesn't mean either of them are bad, okay? It doesn't mean that quick wins are a bad thing, because sometimes a quick win can help you meet the next thing. Getting kids engaged and excited about something then leads to the next thing that you implement, okay? So neither of those are better than the other, but the long haul stuff is going to be the thing that helps you with your practice more so than the quick wins, I would say, okay? Did you want to comment on anything on that, Kerry, or is that making sense to you? That's making sense? Cool. Any ideas from you guys or any thoughts around that at this point? Hopefully it's kind of making sense. It's definitely, can you see the connection between the student version and this version for you? It's quite nice to actually go through this on your next practicum and kind of go, how can I follow the same process before I introduce it to the kids? Because when we ask questions of the kids, and I say this to the team when they're writing questions for our lessons, I'm going, you're writing the question, you're writing what you're asking them to do. What's your answer to the question? What's your expectation of what the kids are going to come up with. So when we ask these questions of ourselves, we need to make sure that not that they're easy, but that they're realistic for us as well. And it's about taking small steps, which again, we ask these big impactful questions, and it's for the kids to show them that they can make change in the world. We know that we can make change in the world. We're adults, we've done our training, we know that we can. So it's about influencing that now and making those changes, which does mean we need to hone in a little bit deeper. Okay, let's show you the template. Here it is here. So it's the same setup as the student one, but it's got different keywords in the boxes. So in the middle, we've got our ripple effect, which I like to call it a ripple effect because that's the level of impact you want. Okay, so when we're talking about, when I compared, I want to improve 15 boys' math scores by 15% versus I want to improve boys, or I just want to improve students' attitudes to maths. That second one is going to have a ripple effect, right? Because it's going to stick with them. They're going to take it to their next teacher who, will then see that they've got that attitude towards maths. It might even ripple effect out to other colleagues at your school. Those kinds of things are your ripple effect questions. So that ripple effect and that question in those top corners, middle in the corner, we know how to do those things. We've talked about those already. Okay. Top right, qualitative and quantitative data. What are the data points that you've pulled out of your observations? Okay, what are the qualitative ones? So what's the impactful buzzwords, that kind of thing? Those word clouds that you can do where you pick out from a survey, say kids have written in a survey, and you pull out all the keywords that show up a lot. You can do things like that. And then the quantitative, what's the difference? Google Forms are a great way to do that, going through that with the kids and getting some data on whatever questions you're asking. And then in the middle, the two triangle pieces, key actions and milestones. Those are really cool. So those are the parts where you start to plan. What are my key actions I want to achieve here? And what are the milestones? Where are the points that I need to stop and reflect on how it's going? That's really important, because if you don't do that, you might find that you go off on a trajectory that you weren't prepared for, which is also great because it means that you're going with what you're looking at. But it's also important to see how far you've gone from your original trajectory. Okay, because if it's not answering your question anymore, is it still related to the observations that you've made, or have you gone off on a different direction? So it's just important to have that reflection, those reflection points at those milestones. Okay, the key actions might be, and you might not know all of these when you start, you can come back and add to this over time. It might be changing the attitude. So it might say, by the end of term 2, I want to have my kids enjoying maths lessons. What does that look like? Okay, what are those things that you're looking for? So then what are the key actions you need to put in place to make those things happen? Is it, I know my kids are really into video games, so is it about gamifying my maths lessons somehow? How can I do that? Okay, things that you can bring in along the way. Okay, down the bottom, connections community, same as the student version. That's still really important. How is your community involved in your practice? I leave that in there because there's no reason why they can't be. Okay, so definitely reach out to your whānau, reach out to the community around you, reach out to your school community to help you with these things. How can they be involved? Connections. Who are the connections that you can look to help you with this? For example, if you want to do more about Te Ara Ako, I would be in that box, or Kerry might be in that box. If you want to learn more about solo, Pam Hook, you're looking at those people that have expertise in that area. Okay, who are those connections? Email them, ask them your question. Most people are happy to reply and give you the time. The worst they can say is no, right? And then the other corner, end game. What does success of this look like? You've got your question, how can I? But what does that actually look like? Use your senses. I know it sounds primary school, but use your senses. What is learning? What does that success look like, sound like, feel like for you, but also for your kids? Because that's what you're looking for in that data at the end, is are those success things happening? And I've left learning environments in there as well, because again, it's just a reflection point for you as a teacher to go, am I am I sticking within the four walls of the classroom, and what does that actually look like? What does my environment in my classroom look like, sound like, feel like to allow this to happen? But also, how can I allow that to happen in other areas outside of the four walls? So again, remember that neuron stuff I talk about new environments create deeper connections in the brain. So how can you do that with things like this as well? Especially, so if I go back to the maths thing, are the kids going out there and estimating how much concrete it takes to pour into a basketball court because you've got one right outside? Or are you watching a video of it on YouTube? Thinking about those practical things you can bring in to improve your outcomes for your question. Okay. And I know I've kind of gone off technology, but I've gone into maths, but it's still really important because it's still the same design cycle for your teaching. It's a design cycle for your practice. And you do it every day. You do it 9 till 3, probably way longer, let's be honest, but say 8 till 4 or whatever, and you're there every day. You want to make the most of it. You want to improve it. That's a lot of your life that you're doing that, and you've trained to do this. By improving and kind of staying excited about what you're doing and being that lifelong learner yourself, things won't get old for you. You know what I mean? You'll stay connected with what's happening around you, which is really important. Okay. Any questions about that template? Any comments or anything at this stage? Perfect. I've thrown a lot of info at you. You are going to get a copy of this, so don't stress. But it's just, I wanted to take you through that cycle to show you those pieces. Then we get to the refine stage, and this is where those milestones come in. So stop at each milestone and reflect on the template, recalibrate and collaborate. Whose voice is missing from the table again? Okay, all the way along. Who's missing? What am I missing here? Is there a puzzle piece? Reflecting and going, when you leave the house and you think you've forgotten something, it's that feeling. Okay, have I remembered my keys? Have I got my sunglasses? Who's missing from the table? Okay, so gathering that data along the way, the qualitative and the quantitative, and it is okay to find a new unplanned discovery, but it's also important to reflect on why it's gone that way and you haven't stuck with this, and if it still matches your observations. Because sometimes we might go, I wanted to do this maths thing, but I found this really cool project that I want to do, and that's cool, but are you still going to have that same observation in your classroom that you started with? So has it really made a difference in terms of what you started with? Okay, just thinking about that. And if it's okay for you, then that's fine. Reflect on whether there should be a shift in focus or another attempt. Communicate with your stakeholders and influencers. Okay, so who are the people at your table that you can communicate with? And again, that's your colleagues, that's people in your house. Thinking about the learner who's taught at home can stand on their own. The learner that's taught at school can stand on the world. All of those things. It starts at home for us too. Just as you did at the beginning, make sure you get a full picture. I would often actually take time to observe again afterwards. So just like you did at the beginning, sit in the middle of your classroom. Is there a difference in the language the kids are using? Is there a difference in the amount of collaboration and engagement? Okay, what does that look like? Writing those things down. Then thinking about where to next, because this cycle doesn't just stop. I know it's in like a koru shape, but it doesn't just stop. It's about, okay, that's cool. What's the next step now? What can I look at now? Okay, go back to your wondering book and align the key messages that you've got to look at what you're going to do next. And it might be completely different now. Your observations post versus what you did at the beginning might be completely different. And you might see some of the same things, and that's okay too. It's just about reflecting and understanding that. Okay. Now the sharing point is just as important for us to share as it is for the kids. Okay, so the effort and the work that you've put into your practice should be celebrated and shared every time. Present it to the board, present it to your mentor teacher, present it to me. I don't care. I'd love to see it. Present it to your community even. They will appreciate the mahi added to enhance the community and its learners. You are doing the work to improve the education of the kids in front of you. And nobody can say that that's a bad thing. Okay? The forum builds relationships, networks with your community, gets your whānau involved in how you teach their children. They buy into your practice and go, wow, my kid's getting a lot out of this. And they're obviously really onto it. They're doing all this research and practice into what they want to improve. Same thing with the project-based learning. Those exhibition nights, have an exhibition presentation yourself and say, this is how I planned it, this is what I do, this is how the kids work together. Showcase that learning. Okay, awesome. So that's the cycle for kind of your practice. Now, again, depends on your school, depends on the practice in your school that is expected of you, but that does not mean that you can't do this yourself as your own, in your own time, or especially on a practicum. And again, it relates back to that process of thinking that we use for the kids when we're talking about project and technology-based learning as well. Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Kerry, before I move on to the resources as a whole? You're good? Cool. Any comments from anybody else? Is that making sense to you guys? Because after this, I'm going to move on to the how to access all that kind of stuff. Is there anything you guys wanted to add or ask at this point? No? Cool. Awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to have to move your faces around so I can read my screen here. Okay, so how do you access the resources? I'm just going to jump back into my other webinar slide for a second. Let me go out of here. And here we go. So just a wee reminder that Te Ara Ako is part of, where is it? I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi here. It's coming. It's not called Click to Add Title, I promise. Science Alive Mātauranga is what it should be. Ooh, that's not looking good, is it? It's not loading for me. Ooh. Jeepers. It's going very slow. This is the kind of one I wanted to show you anyway. Just to show you that Science Alive Mātauranga, that Te Ara Ako strand, the project-based learning strand with the cycle and everything, is one part of what we do. Okay, so if you're wanting to add science, technology, we're just about to release our World of Engineering unit, which I'm very excited about. And I know that Kerry will want to see that as well. But there's some really cool stuff in there that we're doing, and all of them have hands-on activities and stuff at the end. And it's definitely for that level 3 for learner reading level, but you can also show it on your screen, discuss it, watch the videos, do the questions together if you've got younger learners, or they can do it independently. So, to break it down for you, Te Ara Ako, we created the spiral, then we created these projects that go alongside it. This picture is old, so there's actually a lot more there than what you're seeing on the screen. We've got 9 projects in total. You can use them, or you can create your own using the planning that we've gone through. Okay, so it's completely up to you on how you want to use the framework. You might say, I want to plan my own first and give it a crack. If you've got year 4 up, you might say, actually, I want to have a go on one of the EP ones to start with and see how I go. Okay, and then you might want to iterate on that. Completely up to you. So then we've got Antarctic Adventures, which is about a term's worth of work. Te Taiao, the natural world stuff, which has investigations as well, if you want hands-on investigations. Game Changers in Our Footsteps is a massive technology one, which is super cool, meeting amazing people from all over the country that work in areas of STEAM to inspire kids to develop 21st century skills. So we're just doing some mahi on that at the moment. And then, of course, we've got all the other kind of extras we put in our Dropbox, which I'll share with you today. Okay, so how do you get all this stuff? I'll just leave it like this for now. So I've put together this PDF for you, which has all the instructions. Okay, so I'll just take you through it slightly just to give you the next steps. This will come to you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is here, and I've also got a booking link for my calendar. So you literally click on it and you can book straight into my calendar and say, hey, look, I'd love to talk to you about this. I want to book 15 minutes, half an hour. We jump on a video call and I can help you out. Okay, that's absolutely fine. That's what I'm here for. Yes, Kerry.
How much does it cost?
It's free. There's no cost.
I just wanted to make sure, that plug in, that people are aware you're there to support at no cost to the school or to you. So, just to make it clear. Thank you.
Absolutely. No cost at all. And when your associate teacher goes, what's the catch? Say, there isn't one, I promise. So definitely use me and abuse me with whatever you need, okay? It's definitely my job, and I love the stuff. It's my bread and butter. Like, I wish that I was back in the classroom teaching these units and doing this stuff, so I love to live vicariously through you all. For sign up, here are the next steps. So because you guys are training to be teachers and won't necessarily have a school email, that's where it gets a bit tricky. So I cannot have you linked to your own school and then have students attached to you because of student privacy. They have to stay within their school. So to mitigate that, I need you to let me know what school you're at and what date so that I can add you to that school for that period of time. Does that make sense? So you have to let me know, basically. So email me, say, hey, look, I'm at this school from this date to this date. Can I please be added to their school? If they don't have EP, that does not matter. I can still add you to their school because we've got all the schools in our system. So you might be the only one using the platform, but I still have to add you to that particular school, okay? Once you've done that, I will email you with next steps, which will be things like, please provide me with a class list, or you can upload it yourself, and here's how to assign a task. And I've got a wee video to do that. But first things first, you need to email me and say, hey, look, I've got a practicum here. Can you please add me? Once you have graduated or maybe you have a school affiliated email address, you can just jump into EP and use that, okay? So if they've already got EP, let me know as well, and I'll just give you the next instructions, because if they're like, oh, it might be a big intermediate school that uses us for everything, the teachers might give you a login straight away. They might say, hey, look, here's an EP login, you can use it, and then you just need to let me know and I can show you where to find the stuff if you've forgotten, okay? All right, so I've got those details there. The next thing is, once you've logged in, so here's some extra stuff here. So Science Alive content, including Te Ara Ako, is in cross-curricular as a subject because it is cross-curricular, okay? And then you can upload your class on students, but I can talk you through all of that once you get in touch with me as well. But I thought I'd just put it there so just in case you want to go through the whole thing yourself. All right, so here are some extra wee bits and pieces for you. So this takes you to the Canva that I've just been in. So what I've got here along the bottom, is all of our sessions. So session 1, and I've got all the slides there. And then session 2, all the way through. So you guys can go through that whole planning process again, if you want to, and have a look at that. And then again, I've got the planning template there that you can have, all of that stuff. So you just need to download that from Canva and you'll be able to use that. So you get a view-only copy of that, okay? The other thing I've got here is our Dropbox. So if I open our Dropbox, hopefully it's going to. Here we go. Ignore that it says Antarctic Adventures. I haven't figured out how to change that yet. In here is all of our goodies. One of the things I'll point you towards is Te Ara Ako here. Our workbooks. So the workbooks that we have for all of our projects, if you want to run it yourself and just use the workbook portion, for example, this is the printable black and white, save on colour printing for you. This is the workbook piece, so they can go through and do that, and you can kind of facilitate it that way if you don't want to use the EP lessons, but you still want to use the idea. That could help too. The other thing that's in here, let me go back, are our posters. So if you want to actually have the stages up on the wall, and you want to have like ones with the definitions, we've got these all here for you. Okay, we've got them in Kids Speak, so to look around and ask questions, and also with the synonyms here. Okay, so you can print those off and have them laminated or whatever you want to do. I've just made a 5x5 meter poster for a staff room in Takaka. So if you go to Takaka Primary, you'll see that up on their wall, but if you need a high-res big poster, let me know, and I can do that for you as well. The other things that are in here, oh, hang on, here we go. Is all our other stuff. So all of the teacher guides are in here. So if you want to have a look at the planning, so again, our Te Ara Ako one that I've taken you through is in there. Game Changers, Te Taiao, Antarctic Adventures, our Engineering World one will be there soon. Those are all there. And then we've also got kind of our booklet that shows you everything, as well as some posters and stuff as well. So our Te Reo posters. So we've got vocab lists, so this is our Te Taiao one that we've done, that has all these beautiful kupu that you can have on your wall when you're talking about science, technology, all those things that you can use. and I'll give Kerry a sneak peek in you of our World of Engineering one. So we've got our printable activities for all of our engineering stuff here, which are things like for the aerospace lesson, we've got, explore a career in aerospace engineering, what are the skills needed, important knowledge. So they learn all this in the lesson and then they do these activities afterwards. So you can either do that one or you can do the draw a aerospace engineer activity, which kind of breaks down those stereotypes as well. So I will those will be getting uploaded soon and you'll be able to explore those because they're really fun. And again, in your dashboard on EP, it's going to let me in. Let me go in here. This one. Internet's going fast for me now. And the content library, cross-curricular, Science Alive. So pin cross-curricular to the top, Science Alive. You've got our Te Ara Ako projects there. There's your 9 projects split into those 6 stages. You guys will know these inside and out now because you know all the stages, but you'll be able to see that. And again, you can kind of make copies of that and change it if you want to as well, which is a different thing, but I can show you how to do that. Underneath, I've got a link to the Facebook group. So if you haven't joined our Facebook group, Science Alive Mātauranga, jump on there because we put new releases out. There's also the trailer for Game Changers if you wanted to have a look at that, and then also the booking link for my calendar. Underneath here, I've just put some wee videos that I've put together to help you with the navigation of the platform and stuff if you do decide to sign up at all, okay? So there's a lot of things in there. So you've got the slides as well, which are really going to be helpful in terms of these bits and also sequencing your planning if you want to use the framework. And you will receive these along with the this PDF, which is linked together. So I'll pass that through. But that's pretty much me for today. It was a pretty wordy one. We've covered a lot in 54 minutes. I'd love to open it up. This is obviously the last session. So if there's anything that you want to, I would love to hear what you think to start with as well. So if you feel like you've got something out of this, email me or send it through to Kerry and she'll flick it through to me, because it's really helpful for me to know whether this resonates with you so that I can provide it to more schools and to more teachers as well. So if you've found that you've got something out of it, let me know. And it just helps me provide evidence to our board to say this is really working, and they give me more money to do so. So that's really good because it means I can keep offering it for free. So if you do find it helpful, please let me know. But I'd love to open up the floor, and Kerry, if you've got anything to add as well.